Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Well, every single week in January, it'd be 8 years. Wow. We've been having the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS. And what we do each week is we try to either interview somebody who is a founder of a company and can show us how he or she grew that company, or we have somebody that'll teach a specific area. SEO, design, could be anything. Doesn't have to be internet either. Could be inventory control. Could be the law. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Well, everybody asks us why Ask Brien is spelled ASKBRIEN. And my co-host, or technically for this show, the host, Alex Grossman, are you there?
I am here, Mr. Brien. How are you?
I'm doing great. So people want to know, and let's see how much you remember. You've been on the show once or twice, I think. Why is Ask Brien spelled with an E?
Well, I'd say the first reason is because it's an excellent program. It's the best. Ask Brien Radio. Can't get any better than that.
Well, that's a good one. But we always on this show, we always like to thank our engineer with the E.
You're welcome. I do what I can, which is
the minimum. Provides a lot of energy.
I know. We try, yeah.
And what was more important than energy, but excitement.
Wow, that was kind of weak.
That was really bad.
You've had better.
I've had better.
Yeah.
All right. What are the other reasons why we have an E, Alex?
I think you need to eat a little more so you can get a little more excitement in there, to be honest with you.
Well, okay, but I don't think eating is part of the Brien show. Maybe drinking iced tea.
How about expertise?
Okay, but for our expertise, do we know what qualifies you to become an expert? If not, I guess I can help you.
Why don't you tell me what qualifies you to be an expert?
Well, we believe that normally if you work in a profession for 5 years, which is technically 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, that's 2,000. So you need to do 5 years, which is 10,000 hours. If you get 10,000 hours, you will be an expert. Why? Because everyone has that little hiccup when they first start out. They didn't know anything. Whether or not they went to college or not. They may, even if they went to college and got a profession, they still need to learn how to do things. And even if you didn't go to college, to get to the position you're at, you need 10,000 hours. However, being entrepreneurs, I think you and I, at least the two of us, if not anybody else, knows that if we could work 10,000 hours over 5 years, which is 40 hours a week, you and I would be pretty happy, be considered a vacation. Is that correct?
I would call that lazy in an entrepreneurial sense.
Wow. All right. So what are the reasons why is Ask Brien spelled with an E?
There's a plethora of reasons. What can you think of, Mr. Brien?
I see it's all falling on my
It's all coming back down to you.
All right. Well, if somebody can erase the scratch marks on my back, because that bus is really, really bad for me, and I got slid under it. First of all, well, our show is mostly for entrepreneurs with an E. And within that expertise, you obviously have to have experience. But what do we do on the show? Do you know?
We entertain you.
I know.
What do we know? What is it, Jen?
I know. We educate.
Woo-hoo!
What? Educate? Education.
Exactly. We are an education show, just like our sponsor, Legal Steps, who tries to educate people on how to incorporate or how to register a trademark. We are educators. All right. Now, what other E's, Alex? And if you
let's hope we can keep people engaged with what we're going to talk about today, because I think it's very engaging.
Well, the one thing that you have really missed here, and I'm going to have to give you a demerit for this, was you are not very empathetic.
True, very true.
Empathy. All right. Now,
And ego. You forgot
Oh,
ego.
I don't
Thank
have an
you,
ego.
Jen. Ego,
Must be
ego.
it must be Alex. Alex, you have a big
yeah,
ego.
Yeah.
sure. I don't know about that.
Well, and then because Tracy's not here and the engineer knows what it is, what about grease lightning?
It's electrifying.
Woohoo! All right. So now, I think we're going to start the show. We have a very interesting guest.
Oh,
Me.
Yeah?
All right. There's the ego in me.
There is the ego.
There's also an
I
E-
could have used the drum roll as a lead up to the announcement of
Well,
the
and then
guest.
also me has an E in it.
Yeah, that's a stretch. That's a stretch.
A little bit of ego on that E there.
We don't have any ego on this show. All right, Alex. So you are technically going to be taking over today as the host, and hopefully we're
Well,
talking
I
about
think-
the host of the radio show and not the host of any bad diseases.
Well,
Another
I
way
think
hosts
today
work.
we do have something really exciting to talk about, and it should be pretty engaging to everybody who's in a small business entrepreneur, or even a medium or a large business entrepreneur. I think we're in an interesting time of the year. You know, the year is kind of either speeding up or slowing down, depending on what type of business you're in. But the biggest problem that you have is now, being that it's the end of the year, you have to kind of get your stuff together. You have to kind of get together and figure out, what do I need to do to keep myself legal so that I can have another year of business and keep myself going, doing all the right things I need to do from that legal standpoint. And I thought today, since we have a legal eagle, that's an E, an
Another
expert.
E.
Isn't the eagle an E? I think so. It's my world. But we do have a legal expert in here. We could get some legal advice and educate people on what we really need to do. Does that sound like a reasonable plan for you, or am I putting you on the spot too hard?
Well, you're definitely putting me on the spot. But anyway, let's go through this. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, we do need to talk about something that came about last year, and we discussed this on the show a little bit. That was the Corporate Transparency Act that was passed by Congress over 5 years ago. And under the Corporate Transparency Act, they decided that anyone that owns a company or has substantial control of that company, so in other words, you could be an 80% shareholder or you could be a 0% shareholder, but you're the CEO and you have substantial control over how things are done. You're now required under the Corporate Transparency Act to file a certain document with the FinCEN. That's a Financial Crimes Network unit, and that was created many, many years ago, recently to deal with bank issues, bank frauds, also deal with terrorism, to make sure that, you know, when we pass that law after 2001, that people are actually going to not give money to terrorists, people that we have sanctions on, that good guy Vladimir Putin that you like so much. He's everybody's best friend. In order to enforce those things, FinCEN was created. It's kind of like, it's not the FBI, but it certainly is a database of information that the federal government does keep. As part of the Corporate Transparency Act, beginning on January.
Now, who does that apply to, though? I mean, people are listening to that. They're going, well, there's this Corporate Transparency Act. I'm just a little company. I'm not big. Does it apply to me, or is it just for those big guys? Is it just for those three-letter word companies?
Apple has 5 letters, but go ahead.
I was thinking of IBM and staying there, because Apple's just such nice guys, as you know.
Well, and Microsoft is a really 5-letter word in some foreign country, right?
Exactly.
All right, so let's go over that part. So actually, it's the exact opposite. Publicly traded companies like the Googles or even the tiniest company you can think of, maybe someone that's trading on the pink sheets, all of those companies, because they are publicly traded, that means on a stock market, they are legally required already to share some information with the government. So those are actually exempted. You don't need to do that. So if you have a bank or you're an insurance company or you're on the SEC, you're pretty much excluded. It's the exact opposite. It is actually going after the small guy, all right? And so anyone beginning January 1st, 2024, that formed a corporation or a limited liability company or any other entity that is required to be formed through the Secretary of State. There are 50 Secretary of States. Every Secretary of State, for instance, you might even have a limited partnership. You may have another form of business that's being formed through the Secretary of State. Any one of those entities is legally required to file with FinCEN. The name of the document is called a Beneficial Ownership Information Report. Say that 20 times fast, Alex. Beneficial Ownership Information Report.
I want to know who it benefits, though. If it's beneficial, who's it benefiting?
The federal government, so we can have George Orwell in charge. Dun, dun, dun. Do you have any of those dun, dun, duns?
No, I don't. No.
Well, Jen, you need a dun, dun, dun. He's going to do that.
That's better. I have that.
Okay, so that was
wait,
one
here.
of the...
There you go.
All
There
right.
you go.
I
You
like
can
that.
use that. Okay.
Now, there's a few questions there. So that was a great explanation, but there's a couple questions. So me of little mind here, I look at that and I go, okay, well, if I have my business and it's filed with the Secretary of State already, because I had to, let's say I formed an LLC, I had to tell them who I am and I have to fill out that information saying who owns the company. Why don't they have all that information already? Why do I have to file it again? I mean, didn't I already do that when let's say I started my business this year? Don't they have all that information?
Where's that buzz?
Here we go.
Hold on. Wrong.
Incorrect.
Ooh, I like these buttons.
Oh, man, you people like that.
Sorry, Alex.
Nice.
Well, just to let you know, when you file the articles of incorporation or articles of organization with the Secretary of State, if you notice, your name isn't anywhere in California. Certain states may list you, but you're not listed in California. Most states do not require the shareholders to be listed. They might require, like in California, after the articles are filed, there's a form called a Statement of Information, and that Statement of Information is filed, it's like an annual filing, and you file that. You list the headquarters address, the registered agent, the officers and directors of the entity. Nowhere are the shareholders listed. So one of the reasons why they're doing this is, okay, they want to see, and by the way, states like Nevada allow nominee directors. You don't have to be, Alex, if you have a small company here, and you're in Nevada, you can nominate Jen as the officer and Peter as a director.
Wow.
Right. And so there's no requirement on the ownership front. There's also no requirement on who is in control of the entity. Remember, I don't think, Apple's a bad example, but, they have millions of shareholders, right? You're not going to list, if they had to do it, you wouldn't list all the shareholders. You'd list shareholders above 5%, right? And they want substantial control because they want to know who is really making those decisions. Did I answer your question?
Wow, that's a little big. That's a little big brothery to me, but I get it. So okay, so that makes perfect sense, and I can understand why that's the case. But that being said, I have to file this once and then never again. If I get a new shareholder, do I have to file it again? How does that work?
Absolutely, you have to file it again. But first of all, let's go back a little bit. So beginning January 1st, 2024, any entity that was formed anywhere in the United States, not just California, any of the 50 states, you are required to file this beneficial ownership information report. They originally gave you 90 days, then it's 120 days, and they're kind of trying to give you some time because it's something new and people didn't know about it. But if you do not file on time, where's that dun dun dun? If you don't file on time, we don't have
I don't have a dun dun dun. That's all I got.
We need to speak to Andrew for a dun dun dun.
Oh man, I'm gonna wear that horn out.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yeah. Now I've lost my train.
Well, there you go.
You said if you don't file in a certain amount of time, then
you get hit with two benefits: a $500 a day penalty. You're not
$500 a day.
Penalty
A day.
Yes. For up to
I only make $300 a day. That's not going to work out really well.
You make 90% more than anybody else. All right. So.
Well, yeah.
Now, in addition to that, and by the way, there's a limitation. I believe it's $10,000. So after 20 days, that's it. Now, if you intentionally do not file, intentionally. So it's like, I'm avoiding the law. Typically, they haven't come up with anything yet, and I would anticipate it's like, okay, we sent Alex 9 notices and he still hasn't filed, or Alex speaks to us and we tell him he needs to file and he just doesn't file it. When you get to the intentional failure to file, that can be 2 years in a black and white uniform, or orange, depending on which prison you're located in. However, you can be in prison for up to 2 years if you intentionally fail to file. So, anyway,
that's three square a day. Not so bad. So,
well, and you get medical insurance. Great for a homeless guy.
Medical insurance.
Great for a homeless guy.
Yeah, not bad.
All right.
So so that makes sense. There's this report or whatever it is. How do I file it? I mean, am I going to get a notice? Because I mean, they're going to come after me and say I need to do it. How will I get notified that I have to do it, or I just have to guess?
Right now, there are no notices going out to newly formed entities. However, there are plenty of, I don't know how to say this, people out there that are trying to get the business that might notify you. But
Right.
There's no governmental agency per se that I'm aware of that is sending out those notices. And they probably feel in the first year, it's kind of just something new. And so I don't know of any, I have not heard of anything that's trying to imprison. I don't know about penalties either. I do know that there's an organization, and that organization has attacked the filing requirement, and they attacked it in Alabama, and the law they have an injunction right now, so members of that organization do not have to file because the court said it's an undue burdensome. However, it only applies to that plaintiff who is a business organization. So unless you're part of that, you are still required to file. And there's no decision has been made on whether or not, it has to go through the appeal process, et cetera, et cetera. Who knows where it'll end up. Now, that's for people after January 1st, 2024. Jen's giving me the peace sign, so obviously she's probably joined that group, peace, loving.
I do.
Or 2 minutes.
It's 2 minutes, yeah.
Are you a hippie?
Or 2 minutes. Or 2 minutes. Could be the peace sign or 2 minutes.
I'm not a hippie. I missed that generation.
All right. So
Jen's way too young to be a hippie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, maybe her grandparents. Anyway, so now let's go back for today. Everybody, there's 31 million companies that were formed prior to January 1st, 2024 that have this legal requirement to file the beneficial ownership information report. And that deadline is December 31st. So technically it's January 1st, 2025. But basically, since the government is closed on the 1st, it really is the last day. So you've got approximately 42 days. You have 6 weeks to file. And if you don't file, well, I guess you'll be paying $500 a day. No, I'm sure that the government will take its easy time in the beginning, but I think that once they'll form a system in place and they'll start finding people just to try to get people to push it out.
Well, you're not scaring me too much because, the government, what can they do to you? I mean, let's be honest, right?
Well,
There's such
well, let's ask Wesley Snipes.
I think they'd be fine.
Let's ask Wesley Snipes, who didn't file taxes for
Yeah.
10 years because his accountant said you don't need to file tax returns. I mean, that sounds very logical, right, Jen? Yeah. Just don't file your taxes for 10 years. See what happens. Just make sure you look good.
I think it gets the feeling it'd be a good thing to be able to be compliant with this. That would be really smart.
It's either that or make sure you look good in orange.
Right. So I know we're coming up to a break real soon, but afterward, can you tell us how you'd go about doing this and where you'd find this information and what we could do to make this work?
I'll think about it.
Okay. Or maybe a better thing would be just let's one of us go to jail, see what it's like, and then we'll talk about that. Something better to talk about on the show.
I nominate Alex. All right, you listen to the Ask Brien Radio. You listen to the Ask Brien Radio Show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Like no other station in the world. Did you know that, Alex?
I knew that. I actually knew that.
We are like Noah's Station World. I mean, where could you find people like us? Anyway.
Insane asylum, possibly. Prison, maybe, if we don't comply with the legal laws that you've laid out here that I'm so worried about now.
Well, I'm just going to go to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the lobotomy's down the line. All right. Alex.
Oh man.
What was your question?
Lobotomy's overrated. You can take that from me.
How many have you had?
Not enough, apparently. So we were discussing before the break about this beneficial. What is it called? Beneficial ownership. What?
Information report.
Okay. So, and it has to be filed by the end of the year. And you said there could be stiff fines if not. Maybe we'll see how that goes. But it is the government. We all like to, obey our leaders in the government. So how does someone go about doing that?
Well, you have options, right? Sometimes you can go to your accountant or your lawyer. You can go to an online service. I know that our sponsor, Legal Steps, they offer that as well. And you can go to one of these companies and they can do it for you. Or you can do it yourself, okay? If you're doing it yourself, it's going to be a little complicated, but maybe, you want to try to do it yourself, you can do that. You have to go to fincen.com, FINCEN.com. I believe that's the address. And I'll put that in the show notes so we have the exact address. And then if you go there, there's an actual entire place there for the BOIR, and you just go through the prompts. Now, some of the things that you do need to have to do the, first of all, if you have a passport, that's fine. If you don't have,
let's get the notebook out so we can write these down. So we need a passport.
Hold on. First of all, we're in the internet age. Who has a notebook? I mean, maybe when you're first grade, and they don't even write cursive.
It's an app on my Mac. It's okay. Open your notebook.
And by the way,
app on the Mac, and it's got it right here.
And thank God you don't have to write it in cursive because half the country can't write in cursive anymore. They don't teach that in school. They all have to print everything out. If it's on DocuSign, that's good enough, right? So that's one thing. So let's see. I'm actually going to have to look at my notes. I hate to do that to see what it is. All right. So first of all, the first thing you need to know is this the initial report, or are you correcting your report, or you're updating a report, or is a new entity exempt? That's the first question. Okay, you'll need to know these answers to these questions. I say you probably should know the answers prior to going on to the form. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. Now, if you are going to have somebody do it for you, they have to have a number, a special FinCEN number to be able to do that for you, or you can do it yourself. But every entity is going to be issued a number, kind of like the tax ID number, but not as complicated to get when you file these BOIR reports. And so you have to request to get that, but you may be able to do it because you may already be doing those reports anyway. Now,
let's face it. I mean, if we're small, been through this with other businesses. Unless I want to hire, a CFO or have some accounting company and have my lawyer. I just need someone to do it for me. So it's just got to be easy, right?
Well, you can use the law firm Dewey, Cheatham and Howe.
Well, there we go. Well, if I have someone do it, how much is it going to cost me? I mean,
well, it depends on where I don't know what the law firms are charging. I would guesstimate probably a law firm is probably charging at least $500, maybe up to $1,500 if you go to a law firm.
Okay, not doing that. What's my other option?
You can go to your accountant, and if you're doing the tax return with your accountant, they may offer you a, like one of those lead products. Hey, well, if you're doing our taxes with you, that's a service that we'll offer you. Payroll companies do that kind of stuff. They'll try to offer it at a low price. But if you don't want to be hooked in and be obligated to continue somewhere, typically the average fee is around $200 to $300 with a LegalZoom or Zen Business or one of those things out there. That's your typical thing. But that's typically just for the BOIR. There's other things that we're going to discuss about.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that. Okay, so that sounds good. So somewhere less than $500 is good, and maybe someone can do it for you. What else, though? So you piqued my curiosity here. So This to me falls under this whole corporate compliance that, we always have to talk about when we incorporate or we do an LLC. And there's always that little asterisk on the bottom talking about compliance. And there's a whole list of things that we ignore usually because, we've got other things to do like run our business. So what other parts do we have to do to be compliant? I think I know most of these pieces, but can we run through these? Is there like a little checklist for the entrepreneur, what they need to do?
So we have 2 minutes. So because of that, I'm going to save the biggest one and the most important one for last. Try to keep the audience engaged.
Well, I thought you'd run through them and then we could go through them individually.
All right. So
go for it.
All right. We'll run through them, but we're going to save the biggest one, most difficult one to explain for last. So one is, if you have a corporation, you're required to do minutes on a yearly basis. You're required to elect directors on a yearly basis. Most corporations.
Now, is that true with an LLC too, or is that just for a corporation?
So what it comes down to is an LLC is not legally obligated to do minutes. However, there have been cases out there where there are actual lawsuits where people have been told that if you run your LLC like a corporation and prepare minutes, the shareholders will never be personally liable under those circumstances. However, there have been cases out there where people are running it solely as an LLC and they could become personally liable. So therefore, I recommend as an attorney, when I have a client, always have the minutes done. But you don't have to. But it's easier to me. I've been in depositions where I was, my client had never done minutes for the LLC, and we said, you don't have an obligation to do so. That's correct. However, you run the risk that potentially you could become liable. Now,
I have a great attorney, and he helped me out of a bad situation because I did have minutes. So I'm going along for, even as an LLC, that's better to be safe than sorry, right? Can't go back and do it later. So better to be safe and just follow the law.
So we have 5 seconds, so I won't be able to go over the 2 others. So we're going to go over the 2 others when we come back and then explain all 3 of those. Now, you're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We're very proud to have Legal Steps sponsoring us, and now we have our spokesperson. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Jen, you're on.
Dun, dun, dun.
And we want to say thank you to LegalSteps.com. It's spelled LegalStepz. That's with a Z.com. So I'm listening to the conversation here today, and you kind of have a Legal Steps in action right now if you're listening along. And Peter's kind of walking us through the right steps, literally and figuratively. So you'll get that experience with LegalSteps.com. You can register a trademark, form an S corporation, form an LLC, take courses in order to learn how to do that properly. And when you're in the course, you're obviously answering your questions and making sure all the forms are filled out properly. You have kind of like a screen in screen. You can see the legal expert on your screen, and you can see what they're looking at. So you know that you're answering the questions the right way, because certainly I'm not the only one who thinks that maybe sometimes the legalese can get a little confusing, and you want to make sure that you're doing everything properly. So you'll follow along, literally just do what he does. It could not get any easier. And these courses are really great because you're able to take them in really, I think, kind of record time, considering what you're doing, what the content is. Less than 2 hours. I picked a Saturday afternoon, was able to kind of curl up on the couch and work at my own pace at my own time. I was not worried about what somebody else was scheduling for me. Oh, I have to be online or in person, worse, for somebody else's schedule. I could work on my own time. And that, to me, was really big. And I know everybody feels that way, too. We all have other things that are going on. You have a job, you have a spouse, you have kids, dogs, all of that. So you certainly don't have time to work on someone else's schedule. These experts that I mentioned before have over 30 years experience. So if you get stuck, they'll just do it for you. And all of those courses are reviewed by that attorney. And so you know that you're, again, answering the questions the proper way. And finally, the courses are all very affordable. All come in at $150 or less. So you're really you're not going to break the bank when you're trying to get ahead. You've had this great idea for so many years. It's finally time to get ahead and get your business off the ground with the help of the experts at legalsteps.com, legalstepz.com.
Wow, thank you very much.
You bet.
A lot of information there.
Wow.
Wow. Blown away. All right. You listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 AM, 98.1 FM. Alex, you there?
I am here.
So-
I'm just blown away. That was fantastic, Jen. I can't believe you took that course that quickly. It took me like 2.5 hours, so
Yeah.
I'm blown away. Thank you.
Well, maybe I took one of the shorter ones. I don't know. Or maybe I skipped through. I don't know.
That's okay,
Can
Alex.
they
Maybe just a
speed
little
it up?
smarter.
Yeah.
Alex, some
Maybe
people,
just a little smarter.
some people are just very, very
I just have a legal
slow.
mind. I should have been
Hey,
a
at least
lawyer.
I made it through.
Exactly. Now, I have not made it through your question.
No, you didn't. You told me there's this thing called this beneficial ownership information report, and then you told me about minutes, which I'm not actually sure what minutes are, but I think I have an idea because running enough companies, I always had someone do them for me. But I think I understand them. But
Well-
they're important to do. But
So let's break it down into three pieces. You have organizational minutes. That's minutes that are written out where they when you first start your company, and then on an annual basis, you'll have annual shareholder meeting and an annual directors meeting. And every year, like in California, you must elect directors and have at least one meeting per year. Now, what goes into this? So in the organizational meeting, typically you will adopt the fact that the articles were formed. You'll find out who the officers of the company are, who the directors of the company are, where you're going to have your bank account, where your business is going to be located, things of that nature, and who, most importantly, is going to get shares in the company and at what price. Those are the major things, and the bylaws. Those are the major things that are done when you form your entity. On a yearly basis, though, you must have a meeting of the directors, and you must have a meeting of the shareholders, and the shareholders elect directors on a yearly basis. So that's one very, very important factor. Minutes actually it's a meeting, and when we say minutes, we're just kind of documenting a board resolution or a shareholder resolution where people will discuss something like, it could be anything like, hey, we decided we want to finance the new company roof, whatever. All right, that's a big major thing that has to be decided. So those type of things are probably going to be decided by the directors. But there are other things that are going to be decided by a shareholder. Like, for instance, should we issue more stock? That's going to be the shareholder's sole. Directors can pass a resolution, we want to, but it has to be approved by the shareholders. Same thing with a merger. If you wanted to merge or buy another company, the directors would approve it, but then at the end of the day, the shareholders would also have to approve that. So those are some of the differences between the shareholders and directors. You need to have those meetings. Now, I'm going to go through a list of a few things that I've taken on notes for. Not everything, but a few things that do require a board resolution. Some things you may be aware of. So we have election or removal of officers, adoption or amendment of the bylaws, authorizing an issuance of more shares. If you want to borrow money for the corporation, take out a loan, or if you want to guarantee a loan. If there's any transaction between the officer and director or shareholder, so what does that mean? So Alex, you have company A, and you're over there. You're not making a living, and you need to borrow $10,000 to do that. Well, technically, you're supposed to have a promissory note. You can't just take the money out.
right.
People don't realize those type of things. Those are the type of things that would go in the minutes. To open up a bank account, or any type of account, you could open it up at Charles Schwab or Bank of America or little bitty bank. Whatever it is, that is going to require a board resolution and the minutes. Anything like employee compensation, for instance, if you want to have a 401k, a SEP IRA, a pension, a profit sharing plan, or even something as simple as, it's time that we offered medical insurance benefits to our employees. All those things are requiring a board resolution. have to be approved.
And what if we don't do that? What happens if we don't do that? I mean,
Well, then
what are
technically,
they going to do?
well, you're going to be in an orange suit, but everybody else is going to be. We love the orange suit. All right.
We do.
All right. If you don't do that, then it's not approved, and so therefore, technically, if there's a problem down the road, nobody can sit there and say, "Oh, I had a valid insurance plan." You didn't have it. Now it comes more to the employees than the owners, right? Because the employee says, "What do you mean you don't have a 401k plan?" And by the way, in 10 seconds, I'm going to share something. People don't realize this. You put money into a 401k, the owners can take the money and run away. It happens.
Really?
It's happened. And with that note,
Wow.
to try to keep the audience engaged, a big E, we're going to be taking a quick break. Listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And we are returning. Alex, you had another question or what?
I have a lot of questions for you. So I get the idea of minutes now, and I know that's important. So I've got this beneficial ownership information report. I've got minutes. And how do minutes get done? If I want someone to do it, is there someone who will do minutes for me?
So there's only really two ways. You can go to a lawyer and have them do it, and they'll probably charge you an arm and a leg and whatever else body parts you have. You could probably give them a kidney. Now, that's one way. The other way is, believe it or not, these online incorporation services typically do not offer these services. You cannot typically find them there because they're not lawyers. So the only thing that can be done is you could fill out an information questionnaire report and then take that in. Somebody could take that information and, that they have standard templates like software or something and input them for you. That's really the only way you can do it without going to a lawyer. There are some services, as I know, I do have to say, Legal Steps does offer that program as well.
I was going to ask you that because Legal Steps is, who I've used before, and I know they're a sponsor now, but they do offer minute service as well?
Yes, they do, and it's within their price range of every other product and service they're offering. So it's a good place to go, and it's something that needs to be done because you don't want to end up in a lawsuit and find out, oh my God, what happens? Now I'm personally liable. Okay, I started the business because I wanted to make money. Business didn't go well. That's great, but I don't want to have my house and my 401k, my personal 401k attacked now because of this. So it can be very, very detrimental for not doing the minutes.
I am 100% sold on that. So, okay. So we have minutes. We have the beneficial ownership information report. What other things do we need to do? I mean, now I've got two things on my plate. Probably going to give. Well, let me ask a question. Will Legal Steps do both of those for me, so I can take both of those off my checklist?
Well, they'll do both of those plus two more on top of that.
Okay, well, let's talk about. There's two more. What are those?
So one is a registered agent. If you have a corporation or an LLC, there has to be a live person that can accept documents on behalf of the corporation or an LLC. Corporation or LLC is not really a person. It's a person for legal purposes, but it's not a person in the sense of, okay, you're going to deliver it to Apple. Who's going to accept them? There has to be a person. So that person is referred to as a registered agent. And you can go to companies like, I think LegalZoom is offering it for $259. I don't know what lawyers charge for that. There are some services out there that may offer it for a little bit less as well. Or you can, that's included in the compliance package at Legal Steps. And then the other thing that needs to be done on a yearly basis is what we referred to earlier, which is the annual report. Annual report is filed with the Secretary of State, and like, for instance, in California, Statement of Information, you must list the officers, the directors, the registered agent, the business model that you're in, and that has to be filed on a yearly basis. Legal Steps compliance program includes all four. It includes a beneficial ownership information report. It includes the annual minutes for the shareholders and directors. It includes the annual report and the registered agent. One more thing I wanted to add is that in addition to the annual minutes program, that also includes any changes. So if you have a new shareholder come in, and you may need a new share certificate, or you have something that comes up along the way that is going to change something there. That's also included within the package for the compliance program that Legal Steps offers.
Oh, okay, so let me understand this, and I want to. So, of course, Legal Steps run by some really smart people. So what they did is they built like a corporate compliance package. Just it has all of it in it, so you don't have to shop around and do any of that. Is that the way that's set up?
That's exactly, and you can do it. You can actually click on having it done annually, or you can just do it every year on your own. It's up to you. There's no requirement that you have to do it year after year after year. They offer packages and good pricing. I think they're offering like a 20% discount right now off their regular price. And
is there a code or something for listeners or?
Yeah, it's 20 off. Very original. Wow. 20%
wow,
off.
That,
20
good.
off.
I was
wow.
thinking,
Oh my.
Smart. I don't know
wow.
about that anymore. I'm thinking taking that back. I'm not too sure about that. Okay, so let's just say, okay. Oh, let's ask first. How do they get a hold of Legal Steps if they want to get a hold of them to do this?
Right. So there's two things we need to go over because we are running close to the clock time. So first of all, you can write to Brien. Remember, it's Ask Brien. Brien at Legal Steps, and that's BRIEN at legalsteps.com. LEGALSTEPZ.com. So you can write them any questions you have. You can also visit the website at legalsteps.com, and there's a contact us button, I believe. That's as well. And that's pretty much it for right now. Now, I did want to indicate one other thing is this show, in case anybody has missed anything or wants to listen to it again, there's a podcast version that's available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, iTunes, anywhere you can think of having a podcast. This version is also a podcast. So you can go to there and probably be available about 10 days to 2 weeks, and you can listen to the podcast for anything you might have missed on this show. And then finally, we also have show notes that are produced by KHTS on hometownstation.com. There are notes there to listen to it. So unfortunately, we don't have much time left, about 10 seconds. So without any further ado, you're listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show, KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. Over and